we go. Welcome to the Spin 2022 Induction. It's great to have you all here in person, and it's great to have the folks online. So thank you for attending both in person and online. We're really excited to have everybody here at the Catapult. I'll hand over very briefly in a second to Kathy, who's going to kind of kick off the presentations today from the UK Space Agency. But just to let you know that we're not expecting a fire drill in the building this morning, so if the fire alarm does go, please treat it seriously and just follow the exit signs marked, and we'll congregate outside in the fire zone. So with that, my name's Eddie Ross. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager at Satellite Applications Catapult. I've been the one that's been sending you probably about 50 emails in the last week or so. So great that those all landed and you managed to get here safe and sound. Really excited to have you here. I'll be talking a little bit more later on, so I'll pass over to Kathy to kick things off.
Thanks, Eddie. Whoa. I'm not used to driving these things. Ooh, oh there, it's touch screen. Ooh, right. Right, okay. So firstly, it's great to be back in person, in 3D, after 2 years of running this induction day virtually. So thank you all for coming, and thank you all for making this such a brilliant event again. I need to thank the Catapult for being the bird on my shoulder that goes, hey, have you forgotten this or done that or whatever. But for those of you who haven't done Spin before, we've got lots of supervisors in the room as well as interns. So I wanted to give you a bit of a quick taster of what you can expect this year. And there are a couple of things that I will repeat later in the morning, but we'll follow through on that. So wherever you are, whichever company you're with, you will be doing something that is important to them, and you are doing a good job. There is value to everything that you are doing. And importantly, it gives, as far as we're concerned, this opportunity gives you the opportunity to understand the breadth and depth of the UK space sector. And particularly today, we'll give you some tasters of all those different things. You yourselves will come from a range of different disciplines, and there are obviously other interns in other places around the country. They will come from different disciplines as well. You will not all be engineers. You will not all be physicists. There will be business students, geography students, all sorts of different things, all seeking to learn more about the sector as you are doing. Your supervisors and all of us at the Catapult and from the agency are really interested in making sure that you have an enjoyable and successful summer. And so if you have any questions at any stage, feel free to email one of us, ask one of us if we can help or advise in any way. So that kind of gives you what you can expect. What do you have to do? Well, you're here, that's the first thing, and it's great to see all of you. Expect to put in what you want to get out. Don't go into any of your placements half-hearted. You may have thought, not sure, let's try this out. That's the most important thing about a placement like this, is having the opportunity to test the water, see if you like it, see if you don't. And you know, in reality, not everybody does enjoy their placements, but you're here for 8 weeks, you're going to be paid, and actually you can stand pretty much anything for 8 weeks. At least that's my view. So if you have a real issue, do come back to me, but I hope you will all have an absolutely brilliant time. What I don't want you to forget, though, is that there's not only are you going to be working and delivering a fantastic product to the companies that you're working with, but we ask you to produce an academic type poster for presentation at the showcase at the end, and to deliver a 2-minute pitch about what you've done. Don't panic about it now, you shouldn't be, but do ask your host supervisors to help you put it together, because you want to make sure that they're happy with what you've done. So my job has been to get you to this point now. Your job's to make my job in the future as easy as possible by being the most fabulous people that you can be. Okay, pitch about spin finished. Let me move on to what the role of the space agency is across the UK. So importantly, everything we do pretty much these days here on Earth depends on some assets in space to help us do whatever they are. Those resources are really important. They're embedded into everyday life. They're part of our infrastructure and can be really challenging if they fail at any time. It powers the future, not only in terms of being able to monitor and see what we're doing, monitor our environment and the landscape that we live in, enable us to track infrastructure more, but we're also, there are companies around the sector who are now working on whether or not we can use space-based solar power to help us in the future. And whilst you're around, the companies that you're in do set out to learn all of those other things that they're learning about and they're developing. From our perspective, space is a great inspiration. I mean, I laughingly tend to say that the things that inspire kids are space and dinosaurs are dead. Slight adjustment to that as I was reading today's paper, and there's a paleontologist from Edinburgh who is busy advising the latest Jurassic Park movie, and lots of that is much more up to date than it used to be. The thinking's much more understood about dinosaurs, and you could get a great job as a paleontologist in film if you wanted to. But I'm not going to sell you a film job. What I want is this to inspire you. Importantly, many of you will be working on opportunities and projects that will be using Earth observation data to help us protect our planet. And that is all part of what we do need to do as well. And important, and last but not least, by any stretch of the imagination, that absolutely underpinning technology related to position, navigation and timing that helps us with infrastructure, with monitoring where any product is at any time on the planet, so that we know how it's going to get here and at what stage. So hugely important. The agency is involved in delivering the National Space Strategy, which was published last year. That means supporting the development of new investment across the sector. In my role here, it's about making sure that the growth of the sector is supported with the right people who they need to make the future workforce. And that's all of you. At least I hope it's all of you. We're ensuring that we're supporting the delivery of different space capabilities and different missions that will benefit society. You may have seen a big building to the right of this building, and that's the new National Space Technology Facility. So there's a big testing facility next door for satellites and other missions. But we also have similar capabilities based at Westcott in Buckinghamshire, where they're testing propulsion facilities, and we will have some students over there as well. And importantly, championing the power of space to benefit all of us every day. So, Diana, over to you. So just to put things in perspective, the agency supports two key cohorts of students, and the rest of a lot of the sector support a whole lot more. We provide grants through two of our mechanisms. One's our education and skills strand, and also through our spaceflight strand. Diana, over to you.
Thank you. I am Diana, as Kathy mentioned, and I'm also part of the Space Agency, but I'm a bit further from the skills team so far. I am mainly focused on spaceflight and the spaceflight program. I'm going to provide a bit of information about what we do in general, what my team does, and what our goals are for the future. The Spaceflight program was set up to deliver a sustainable small satellite launch market. And this means that we want to have both vertical and horizontal launches from the UK, and we're aiming overall to get about 10% of the global space market by 2030. And a very important aspect is as well the fact that we're aiming to have first mover advantage. So we're trying to get the first launch in the UK, hopefully this year, if we're lucky enough to get it moving by then. And we're aiming to achieve these goals by looking at the main aspects that are important in the UK and that are benefits in the UK. For example, the geography, the environment for building business, making sure that we have the right regulations in place, the skills in place, and so on. And I just realized this room started. I realized you're not seeing the slide. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the Spaceflight program, and the Spaceflight program has two big aspects, and one of them is the build side of the program and the develop side. And the build side is focusing on what I was talking about in terms of the first launch, and its aim is to create a pathfinder launch, to have that first trigger, and to make sure that the industry has a little bit of a boom, and that we are creating not only the media attraction and attracting business, but also a bit of heritage, because this is what we're missing so far in the UK. And the other side of the program is the develop side, which I'm part of. And the develop side is focusing on establishing the sustainable side of the small satellite launch market. So for example, we have the first launch, everything is going amazing. We have the first part. How do we ensure that on the long term, we still maintain that in 5 years from now, we're not going to lose that track? How do we make sure that we're still going to be important and an important factor in the global market? Got it. And as part of the develop side of the program, there is the interventions program. And the interventions program is looking exactly at what I said, making sure that long term we have the regulations and the interventions to ensure that we're not losing in front of other countries when it comes to having a good cost, when it comes to having the skills in the market, when it comes to having the right technology. And our aim is to identify and recommend potential interventions that would maximize our benefit and improve our global competitiveness. And that means identifying not only what we're best at, but what we're worse at. So we're looking at what are our strengths and how can we use that in the future, and also what are our risks and how can we mitigate them. And we use various sources in order to inform that. For example, we engage with industry on a one-to-one basis. We engage the industry through requests for information, through different studies, and we're trying to make sure that whatever we do is informed by industry. And for example, we have the 2021 launch market study, and that helped us to identify the risks I was talking about, and how can we make sure that we transform those risks into something that's not going to affect us long term. And the studies are not only establishing what we do, but also what other countries are doing, which ones are competitors. Because, for example, in order to achieve the first launch, we need to look at what other countries are actually trying to do the same. And Norway is one of the biggest competitors because they have the heritage, they have the infrastructure, they have the geography that is right for this, but also countries like Italy, Spain, Portugal are also very good. So we're trying to look at all of the factors and to make sure that in the long term, we're creating the right interventions to support the market. And these interventions could be focused on skills, like what we do here today, can be focused on technology development, on making sure that the supply chain is supported as much as possible, and anything that in general the market needs. I will probably be working quite a bit with some of you, those that are focused on spaceflight. And I think I'll have meetings with you, but I'm generally happy to talk to anyone to answer questions. I was probably over 2 years ago, so I kind of get it. It's difficult to do all the internships. You want to get as much experience as possible. So if you need quite fresh perspective as well. I'm here to talk to any one of you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Anna. Did anybody have any questions for them before we move on? Anybody online? No? Okay. So I'll go next then. So as I said, my name is Eddie Ross. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager at Satellite Applications Catapult. So I'll just provide an overview of who we are at the Catapult. But first things first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to where I am today, which I find is always useful kind of context. And also give you some background as to who the Catapult is and the network that we sit within. So a number of years ago, I maybe would have been jealous that I wasn't one of you guys sat on this chair today, because you guys were the lucky ones. But I'm really proud today that I'm here still up in front of you, introducing you all to the spin scheme. So I followed a fairly traditional route into the space sector with background sort of physics, masters in astronautics and space engineering, then a systems engineer for a number of years, before getting pulled back into academia, where I wanted to kind of flex the kind of data science muscle. So went into an astrophysics PhD before coming into being the knowledge exchange manager here at the Catapult, where I tried to help academia and industry to work together. So yeah, before I tell you about the Satellite Applications Catapult, it's just worth setting the scene. So the Satellite Applications Catapult is part of the Catapult network. So there are 9 technology and innovation centres that are all non-for-profit organisations, and they're all here to try to grow the specific sectors and the domains that they're involved in. And for us, we're the Satellite Applications Catapult, so here to try to grow the space sector. We're here to try to bridge that gap between the research base and industry, trying to tackle some of the biggest challenges that are posed to the various industries. And for us, as I say, we're here for trying to grow the space sector. So the Catapult network, each of the 9 Catapult centres, is really trying to bridge this gap in the middle in the technology readiness levels between around 4 to 6, where that is applied research and development. So taking the university academic research through to commercialization, where industry is good at the industrial R&D, universities are really good at that kind of blue sky thinking and early stage TRL research and development. But we find often in the UK that there's this gap in between where a lot of the university research isn't making it through to industrial research. So that's really what the Catapult centres are all about, helping that kind of knowledge flow from universities out to industry. And so who are we within that network? So we're the Satellite Applications Catapult, and our mission is here on the screen: to innovate for a better world empowered by space. And we focus on 3 specific technology areas. So the first is satellite communications, which is quite obvious, just all around connectivity. There's Earth observation, and also encompassed in that is geospatial intelligence, so any kind of geospatial insights using the combination of satellite data and ground-based sensing. And then third is access to space. So where the first 2 were more downstream, so that's where we get our name from, satellite applications, so downstream applications of satellites. This third one, access to space, is more around the upstream, so looking at manufacture and launch, and also more recently in-orbit services and manufacturing in space, including things like space-based solar power. Underpinning those 3 technology areas, there's also future systems, so looking at what emerging technologies there are out there and how they can kind of be applied into the space sector, or how can they break into the space sector commercially. And all of these different technologies, we're looking to apply them in a range of market areas, so applying them to things like transport industry, agriculture and farming, right through to sort of the energy sector and the health sector. So I just think it's worthwhile just taking a pause just to kind of say that when thinking about the types of roles there are in the space sector, there's more than that potentially meets the eye. Lots of people just think that it's just astronauts, and I think we all know that's not the case. And another, you scratch the layer one lower and everyone just thinks it's a bunch of engineers, but actually in the space sector, there's way more roles, and that's very true in the Catapult, and there's much more than meets the eye on the surface of the Catapult. So really this kind of rocket launch analogy is just saying the thing on the top there is the payload. So at the Catapult, they're the technical teams, they're kind of those 3 teams that I mentioned, the kind of connectivity, Earth observation, and this access to space. But underneath all of that, we've got the actual rocket itself, and that's kind of our business development managers and the people that are really providing that direction and thrust. And then on the ground, we've got the operations. So you can't launch a rocket without mission control and without all the ground segment. And that's very true with any business, but it's also true at the Catapult. So, we have our HR, we have our finance team, our legal team, our marketing team. So without all of these, we wouldn't be able to operate day to day, just like you wouldn't be able to launch a rocket into space. You wouldn't be able to launch the end payload into space. So, there's lots and lots of different roles in the sector. So just always have that in the back of your mind that, there's lots of ways that you can contribute to the space sector. And this is basically the UK space sector that you're going to be contributing to as a spintern, and hopefully in your career you'll be contributing to for many years in the future. So the Catapult and the UK Space Agency work really closely to support this UK-wide space ecosystem. We've helped to initiate a number of clusters and hubs. The Catapult itself has 3 centres of excellence in satellite applications. So there's one in the southwest, one in the south coast, and one in the northeast. And these are really pioneers, just showcasing the regions, what you can do with satellite technology and data, and try and support those businesses. So there's been a historic view where all of the space sector in the UK has been predominantly focused into the southeast of England, but this map is just going to show that we're developing that across the whole of the UK now, and that we've got a really thriving and booming sector that you guys will all be contributing to. So new opportunities. So where do we see that the world will land in 2030? So all of the strategies are kind of aiming towards the end of the decade. So what does the world potentially look like for space at that point in time? So we expect that there'll be a lunar economy that's starting to develop. So infrastructure building and commercial activity on the moon. I've already made a reference to, and so did Kathy, an in-orbit economy. So that's things like servicing satellites and manufacturing in space, including things like space-based solar power. But that's a little bit more far out than 2030. But by the end of the decade, absolutely, we should see, and we'll hear from Space Forge a little later, taking really a great advantage of that microgravity environment in space, manufacturing in space, and looking to either return that to Earth or utilize that in space to start to create bigger structures. Earth observation, it's a sector that's already booming, but what we hope to see by the end of the decade is really that businesses will be using those insights from Earth observation data to try to help manage the business better, but also try to make better decisions to manage the whole planet in a greener way to achieve those net zero targets. And then finally, on global connectivity and positioning, we expect that we'll get this high data rate connectivity everywhere, and that the UK will likely have a position, navigation and timing system itself. So moving away from that and moving kind of back to you guys, so what's the value of internships? So I've done this in the lens of from the Catapult's perspective, and also how we see this as valuable for you as interns. So for the Catapult, we aim to provide a rewarding and real world experience, and that gives mutual benefit. Our internships also support us to build strong relationships with the academic organizations that you've come from, and help us build those links back to academia, and help us try to get us, as that slide previously showed, some of that early stage TRL work out to be late stage TRL in industry. It helps us to provide a pipeline of talented, work-ready individuals. So these experiences that you're going to gain over the next 8 weeks or so are really going to provide you with that relevant experience to actually take roles in the sector in the future. Often there's this vicious circle where you can't get a job because you haven't got the experience, and you can't get the experience because you can't get a job. And this internship is hopefully going to give you that bridge to give you some of that experience, and you move into the sector in a permanent role in the future. And just an important note there is that we're not just always looking to try and encourage people that are kind of flying the space flag already, or they're kind of wearing their space cap. We're looking at anybody that's able to provide their knowledge and expertise into any space-derived challenges. So for the student, I mean, first things first, it's probably quite obvious, but you're getting a paid placement opportunity. So, that's great. I'm sure you're all pleased that over the next sort of 2 months, you're going to be earning a nice paycheck. But also internships, they enable learning, they enable practice. So this is a really good environment for you to ask questions, make mistakes, but learn from them as well. Develop networks. So there's I don't know how many interns actually made it into the room today, but as a cohort now, you should continue being in contact with each other. Add each other to LinkedIn. We're going to make a group actually on something which we launched called the Space Enterprise Community, and there's a variety of businesses there. So this is just a way for you to you've got your foot in the door now. Make sure you make the most of it and develop your network. And finally, it looks great on the CV. So you've had this internship, you've got real world experience in a space sector organization. So make sure you really emphasize that on your CV and make the most of the time whilst you're on the internship. So just to kind of finish off and get towards the end here, so I just thought it's worthwhile just showing you what we're doing, contributing to the spin scheme. So the Catapult funds its own spin turns. I think 2013 is when we started, and we've had about 42 interns since then. And this year we're taking on a whopping 11, so kind of, you know, almost a quarter of our spin turns ever. You know, we're adding to that this summer, and we've got a range of really interesting projects. So some that are on the more technical side, and some that are on the more business side. So things like mapping the ecosystem, like we've done in the UK. We're doing that in Australia, working closely with the kind of Catapult counterpart over in Australia. So things like exploring lunar space missions, in-orbit servicing, using Earth observation, communications, and looking at how, you know, that we can apply Earth observation through in the financial sector. So a variety of interesting projects that I'm hoping that our spin turns are really going to get their teeth stuck into this summer. So that's everything from me. I'll pause just to ask if anybody's got any questions, but if not, we'll pass on to the next industry speaker. So no questions. Anybody online? All looks good. Okay, so I think next up we have Esther.
Okay, hi, hello everyone. My name is Estelle Blake, and I have some slides here to present Global Trust, who we are and what we do. But I think that I would like to explain a little bit of my personal experience and explain a little bit what Kathy was saying, that I'm an aerospace engineer. So I'm one of these kids that dinosaurs was not my thing, too difficult. I was there with my little telescope with my dad, space. I arrived to uni, aerospace engineering. Let's continue there, master, PhD. So if you ask what should be my job today, you imagine me probably in a lab, building satellites. But no, I'm a business development manager. Why? Because when I was doing my career, my studies, I did a little internship during summertime about business development. A little bit random, but it was a good opportunity for me. And when I finished my PhD, I was thinking, okay, Estelle, what do you like? Is the rest of your life that you have to do a job? Do you like the lab work? Do you like to be an engineer? Or that small internship that was there, that was your thing? So I pursued that career. I said, okay, no. What I want to do is that thing. And that small experience is what gave me the opportunity to apply for my first job as a business developer, because it was a thing, there's a previous experience, like, okay, yeah, let's put that summer experience here. And the guy that was my boss at that time, Vladimir, said, okay, yeah, you have experience, you know the sector well, you like to talk to people clearly, and you will see. And blah, 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 blah. So why not? Give this girl a chance. And here I'm today. I'm pursuing the career that I like with a background that potentially people think that I should be doing another job. So there is space for lots of different profiles in the space sector. If you like the space, you have this like, oh, wow, I'm a space lover. Try to pursue your small path, because I'm sure that is there for you. Good. Now I will crash the computer. Let's try to see. No, I did it right. Thank you. So Global Trust, who we are. So we are a data analytics company that what we do is we use the power of satellite technology to support the sustainability agendas of different corporates and governments. So we are a spin-out of Satellite Applications Catapult. Our both co-founders were Catapult people, as well as myself. And as Catapult helped us, we decided to pursue our own path and create this organization. We're also part of the Swedish Space Corporation Group, and you will see why I mentioned that a little bit later. And we have offices here in Winchester, where Ewan will be joining us, but we also have an office back in Stockholm, in Sweden. So why we created Global Trust is basically because we saw that there is a change in how the society behaves. When we buy a new t-shirt, it's not just the price anymore. We try to understand where this is coming from. Is this created in a sustainable way? There is child labor, there is good products creating that. So all this change in the behavior of the society is what makes us to think that there is a need for better information, for transparent information from both sides, from the consumer, but also for the organizations, because there is new regulations from the EU, but also from the UK that are arriving, and they are pushing the sustainability agendas of these companies. So what we do is to support business to become a much more responsible business. Oh, this CSR is not fashion called CSR anymore. Now we call responsible business, but for the ones that know the word, but also to report in their ESGs. So in the investors want to understand how the companies behave, not just themselves, but also their suppliers. Finally, we also support governments in their public policy delivery. So if there is long-term programs, it's not really supporting them if there is an emergency in this sense. It's more a kind of a long-term investment when they want to understand. And oops, I think that there's someone joining us. Should I accept? So how we can support using space technology the long-term strategy. So as a company, as a company, we work in these 4 pillars. And you'll see there is 3 quite market-driven pillars, but the last one is more spacey. But I will explain all of them. So the first one, the preservation of the environment and biodiversity, is where we help companies to plan and understand their impact of their activities. If we put an example, and you will see, I always go to mine because it's my background. So if we try to understand a new mine in, I don't know, doesn't matter, in the UK, they really need to understand the impact of their activities. And plenty of you will say, no, mines, no, but yeah, we want to have electric cars, so we need mines. So how we can help them to be much more responsible from an environmental perspective, how we can be sure that if they deforestate, they have a plan in the future to reforestate again this area. Once we think that these operations are in place, it's also important to monitor their ongoing operational impact. And here is where we support to create this kind of near real-time identification of, for instance, pollution or water quality changes. And we help them to plot and present this information back to their boards, but also to the regulators. And finally, more kind of a governmental perspective, as I was saying before, we can help to create policies. That's a long-term approach. It's not just today how we do it in an operational way, it's how we help a government to understand and to create what is coming in the future using this kind of technologies. So the good news is our internship will be sitting here. In which way? We, as I said before, we are part of the Swedish Space Corporation Group, and they have one of their spaceports, as Diana was saying before, up in the north. Again, fingers crossed, they are hoping for the end of 2022 to have their first launch, and having conversations with them is like, hey, why we don't help to close this loop? Guys, you go, you launch a satellite, satellites are there, you help them to capture this data. We're here to create products and applications for you to launch in a sustainable way. So in some way, we see that the opportunity to create this loop. So the internship will be based in how we can understand better what are these environmental challenges, but not just for, let's call, our group interests for the UK. So Diana, I will put you in contact with you and later. I'm just letting you know here. But how we can do that from a UK perspective, from an American perspective, how we can all benefit as a sector of our strengths. And here is where we'll put the effort this summer. If we continue, we have other areas that as a company, we are putting a lot of effort. And one is the societal monitoring, the societal impact of the activities. And here there is something quite powerful when we engage with communities. If you think in operations depending in which countries, that they don't have an environmental masters to really understand this, okay, I'm doing it in this way. No, they really want to see where is my house and how this is impacting me. Let's be honest, I want to see the same. So how we use this kind of satellite information to present data in a different way, in a really intuitive way. So we use the power of this technology to engage with the communities, to monitor the impact and really present it back and close this gap of trust. We also can monitor the dynamics. If we think in some of these remote areas, there are new communities appearing, and sometimes there is challenges to interact with the operations of some of the corporates that we work. So how we can understand the dynamics, the new sites, what is happening there. The next area, oopsie. is linked to the supply chain. As I was saying before, the investors are not happy anymore to see, okay, I'm a good guy, I'm doing the thing right. It's like, no, what is your supplier doing? Because if you buy from this guy needs to be a good guy too. And we can see this quite a lot, for instance, in the automotive sector. You go with one of these Polestar cars, like Swedish standard, the best car, everything is nice, green and fantastic. Yeah, but where is this cobalt coming from? This cobalt is coming from a mine in DRC. Is this mine in DRC being operated properly? If there is child labor, there is deforestation associated. So we help the companies to really understand the whole supply chain, all the different steps, and provide this information, because sometimes they don't have a clue of what is happening around them, because they are far away, because it's difficult travel, because they don't have the tools or even the permission to go to that site. So how we can close again this gap of information. And finally, sometimes from a financial perspective, the people want to understand the supply chain from an external point of view. So if I want to invest again in a mineral, if I want to invest in a product, how it is going through the whole supply chain, how is it evolving? So we support this part too. And the final area, which was, to be honest, not part of our initial business plan. We were not expecting space people to approach us for anything. We're the guys talking to the real world. But we start to see that people that are designing the new missions wanted to understand what the real world was. And I think that I can criticize a little bit the space sector because I'm part of it, but the space people is really good talking to space people. And we do our little club and we all good friends and it's our little bubble. No, the people that design the new missions need to understand what are the challenges in the ground. And we sometimes help to close this gap. So we engage with the new mission designers and we support with market information, with challenges, we create workshops, and we put these two worlds together. So this is, as you can see, a little bit different, but it helps all the other pillars of our business. So you probably know that, but it's good to remember why it's so powerful, our technology, why space, why satellites are so powerful. And I think that is because it offers us a global coverage. People is asking me, but I can see that mine in China. It's like, yes, but I don't have permission. It's like, yes, but we can help you to understand. And one of our first projects was specifically about a group of investors really trying to understand what was happening in a mine in China, because they don't have a clue. They don't have information from the government, from the mining company, or even from the local community. So we have this global coverage that helps us. And satellite technology and how we work with that is really robust and is really scalable. And when we design something, we can tweak it and reuse it and make it bigger and bigger. So I think that it's important that as an organization and as a sector, we are an end user driven sector, that we interact with the end users and we create products that are valuable for them. So I put some case studies here and some examples, and I'm not sure how, more or less okay, to go through them. But you can see the power of this technology and how visual sometimes it can be to create environmental mapping. This is some dust analysis, but we can present it back to them. We can show that to the communities and they can understand what is happening. We can monitor supply chain. That's the case of a factory construction that one of their suppliers was really trying to understand, but there is operations there or not, because they are saying that nothing is happening, but I have the feeling. So how we can provide this information? And from an environmental perspective, we can see here, this is the China example, that in these specific dams in the middle of China, there was gossips that something happened there. And that dam not collapsed really, it had a crack and had some seepage, but it was this pollution was affecting 115 kilometers river down, and no one in the investment community had a clue of what was happening there. So how we can provide this trust, how we can provide this information, and the same, that is an example of a supply chain from a completely different sector, factories in Indonesia, that they were polluting the river, but the single day that they go and check the water quality, obviously, the water is fantastic because everyone is waiting and everything is shiny. But what is happening the other 364 days? And how we can use this information to create a much better world, a much more sustainable world. So this is what Global Trust is trying to do, and we are putting a lot of effort with our small team that is growing, and we hope that even feels part of the team this summer working with us. So thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions for Estelle? Oh, yeah, one back.
Thank you very much for the presentation. This is just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
How do you deal with technology literacy when you're trying to work with people? So you quite advanced in what you do.
Yeah.
So a lot of people might not be able to understand why you do it.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
That's a really, really good question. And sometimes when we present, in our case, to our investors, to the Swedish Space Corporation Group, how we do our, let's call, sales cycle, that is really different because our clients don't know what is space. And to be honest, half of the time, they don't care if it's a satellite or me doing like that. But there is a point that you need to educate your clients and explain, okay, there is a satellite here in the story, but what is important for you is what I can do with the satellite, and try to create this link into the results more on the technology. There's the cool part, and sometimes I always call it the Christmas moment when you start to explain and you see this kind of face of like, wow, you can do that. It's like, yeah, it's super cool, I know. But there is this educational part that goes before our sales process that it's quite different if you are selling books or pens or something that people is used to. But yeah, it's an important point, and we try to make it simple. And as I said, focus in the results on what this means for you more than, okay, what is a satellite and how a satellite is built.
Okay, so next up we have Anselm, who's joining us online. So I think I can see you on the call.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you in the room. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because I think, are you happy to drive the slides yourself?
Yes, I can share my screen, yeah.
Just give me 1 second just so we can make sure we can see it in the room as well. Okay, over to you, Anselm. Thank you.
Is that okay? Can you see?
Yep.
Everything's fine. Okay, cool. Hi, hello. My name is Anton Wojciech Yamamoto. I'm a space systems engineer at Space Forge. I will be going through very quickly through my background, and a bit spend a bit more time on Space Forge and what we do here. Now, apology in advance, since we are very much early in our development process. A lot of our projects are very much a secret. I will be able to tell you the overall goals and aims and what we aim to do, but any details, and I won't be able to tell you anything about that. But hopefully you will be able to learn something. So very quickly about my background, I graduated from the University of Bristol last year with an integrated master's in aerospace and engineering. And then I had a spin turn, just like you guys, at Space Forge for 2 months. My project was calculating the link budget for the satellites for the 4x1 platform, which, if you guys don't know, is something to do. It's calculating the power to input into the communication system to make sure that the communication links is good enough. Then in August, I was offered a full-time space systems engineer role, and I gladly accepted. And now I am the technical lead on the couple of subsystems. And that's something that really only happens in startups, is that I just graduated and now I'm in charge of couple of subsystems, which are quite important as well. It's quite daunting. It was the first meeting with my superior once, I'm quite happy I got a full-time job, and they're like, oh yeah, now you're in charge of these things. Good luck. Yes, so then what is Space Forge? We are an in-space manufacturing company, and we're aiming to transform the return from space technologies. And really it's for the benefit of whole humankind. So it's really to use space to improve life on Earth. It's not really in space for use in space, it's very much in space to bring back to Earth. It was founded in 2018 by Joshua Weston and Anthony Bacon, which are now the CEO and CTO respectively. And when I started last summer, there were 14 of us. I think I was the 14th employee. Now there's like around 35, 36 of us. So we are very much growing very quickly, which is a very exciting time. We had the Europe's largest seed funding round for a space tech company. I don't really know what that means because I'm not really involved in those side of things, but that's something the CEO is very proud of. So here it is. And a couple of our aims really is also to be the first carbon negative space company and to, in the future, regularly launch, retrieve, and relaunch satellites. So now, first of all, why use space to manufacture material? So that's really what we want to do in the future, is manufacture material in space. So there's a couple of reasons, but I'll go through them. One of them is the gravity. So in microgravity, there is no gravity-induced defects in any crystal growth, and also there's no buoyancy effect in any liquid mixing. So, for example, alloy mixing, you'll have more perfect combination of material, and crystal growth, it's much easier to get perfect monocrystalline structures. There's also in space there's vacuum. It's very expensive on Earth to have a clean vacuum. It's very expensive, energy expensive. In space, you just open a valve and then you have no contaminants, and you have very low. And depending on how high you're going to the atmosphere, there's a bit of pressure, but really much better than what you can get on Earth. And also, it's much in space. It's much easier to go into the extremes of temperature. So near 0 Kelvin and very high temperature. You don't have the atmosphere. You don't have the air absorbing and any high temperature process you have. You still lose heat via radiation, but you have the whole convection. That does happen. That does not happen. So how are we going to take the advantage of space? Is because we are making the 4-star platforms. So that is our fully reusable on-orbit manufacturing platform. And we are currently on the process of developing the 4-star 1. We are very early on the 4-star 2 as well, but mainly focusing on the 4-star 1, which is our research scale platform. So that's very much for us to learn how to use the technologies we're developing. We have the first launch planned in the late 2023. And yes, we're planning on making several of them, really for us to learn how to use to learn how to launch them and then return them, and then we can develop the proper expertise that we need for the 4-star 2, which is a production scale platform. So that's going to be a bigger satellites. The 4-star 1 is going to be around 30 kilograms. The 4-star 2 is going to be around 100 to 150 kilograms. And yes, and then the 4-star 2 is going to be our workhorse, which is launched in the far future. So 2026, 2027, our plan is to really launch once a month and return once a month. So that's really a high cadence of material production. Yes, of cadence of material production to really drive our business model. So the technology that we need, there's 4 core technologies that we need and that we are currently developing. One of it is the first one is the reusable heat shield technology, which is a brand new type of reentry technology, which is gentler than the traditional ablative technology. I can't show you how it looks like, but it allows for more, since it's more gentle, it's gentler than the ablative Soyuz or Dragon capsule technology. Any more delicate payloads, for example, biomedical payloads, will be able to be returned with less stress. We also need to develop a re-entry prediction software. When Andrew and Josh started the company, they thought they would be able to just buy the software and have it off the shelf, but they realized that there was nothing that was good enough, or that was appropriate for our use. So now we have to develop it our own as well. There's a capture system. Since there is no desert in the UK, we will have to be landing in the ocean, and seawater is not very good for any hardware. So we have to develop a capture net system that will move around on the sea to capture the falling 4 stars. And then of course there's a payload, internally and externally developed. Because even without a payload, being able to send something to space and return it to Earth is a viable business case. The people will pay for service, and we have clients that are ready, that are interested in our capability to do that. One of it is ESA as well, that there's a 5-year waiting period for the ISS to send experiments to the ISS, and if they can make an automated process to put in their 4 stars, we'll be able to provide this service for them. But we also are developing our own payloads, which is, again, we are going to be manufacturing material. Again, can't say anything about it. But yes, and that's a whole very important project, internal project we have as well. I'm going very quickly, but yes, and then very quickly, we do have a launch this summer in the August-September period about the first launch out of the UK soil with Virgin Orbit. We had the opportunity to put something to have a payload on this launch, so we decided that we should definitely take this opportunity to do so. So we are developing the FS0 CubeSat, and that's really a very one-off mission to just really mainly for the press, but also for us to learn how to send something to space and test a couple of our technologies as well. And it's going to be the first satellite developed in Wales. Yes, thank you very much. I realized it was very quick. I didn't realize I would speak that quickly, but yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
So are there any questions in the room or online for Anton? Seems like not. No. Okay, thanks, Anton.
Thank you very much.
So if you could stop sharing your screen, I'll go back to sharing mine.
Yes.
You can just watch me. So I'm a new for around the digital world. There we go. Yeah. Okay, good. So what we have now is a chance for a coffee break. I think we're running slightly early, but I don't think anybody's going to be upset about that if we go for 8 more minutes of coffee. So yeah, help yourself. There's tea and coffee and more pastries at the back of the room. For the folks that are online, go and explore your kitchens and see what you've got. And we'll all be back at 11:15. Thanks a lot.
Right, so Joe, with this phone system, so you log into Zoom as normal. Now we've registered her account.
Yep.
Or I have to tell him now, don't I? Something.
Yeah, and then what he'll do is he'll enable the phone side of it, and then
Right.
literally the next time you sign in, there's your bit at the top.
Welcome back to everybody online. There's just a couple more people grabbing a final coffee or tea in the room, so we'll just give them a second. So yeah, hope you all had a nice coffee break. What I forgot to do at the start was actually show everybody what the agenda was for today's induction. So I'll just leave this on the board just for a second. So we've obviously gone through the things that are slightly faded. So what we've got next is for the next hour, I've got 4 more talks from industry. Then we'll have a lunch networking session for 45 minutes. The tour of Raoul's space on request by Raoul is no longer going to be a tour, but what we're going to do instead, we're still going to visit. We'll get a talk, which is going to be held in their big auditorium where they've got a view to their clean room. So hopefully that's still going to be quite exciting for everybody. Then we'll come back here. We'll have a couple of wrap ups. So Kathy and I will just kind of round off the day. There'll be a little bit more time for networking, and then we'll kind of close the session off slightly earlier than originally planned at 3 o'clock rather than 3:30. But just you're welcome to hang around, or go to start your internships on the campus if you're starting them on the campus. The Catapult ones, feel free to go and head upstairs and collect your IT equipment. But so what we've got next is more talks from industry. So as I said, we've got 4 talks from industry. And the first one is Simon from Bryce Tech. So I'll hand over to Simon.
Well, good morning, everyone. Really great to be here today. I hope you all dried off. For anyone who got soaked to the skin like me walking across through our beautiful summer weather. My name is Simon Potter. I work for Bryce Tech. Bryce is an analytic consulting firm that's active in a number of domains, but our primary focus is in the space and satellite industry. Alongside that, we have a practice that focuses on cybersecurity, on the defense sector, on next generation aerospace and aviation, and a few other adjacent domains. But our primary focus is space and satellite. I'll speak a little bit more about the types of things that we do, but ultimately we produce a lot of data and analysis in support of industry itself. So before we get into kind of the types of things that we do on a day-to-day basis, very exciting to be here on the launch of another spin program. Bryce has been lucky enough to be involved in the spin term program for the last 4 years. We're excited and amazed every year at the number of both the high quality of applications that we receive, but also the number that we receive. We think it's an incredibly worthwhile program. We've been lucky enough, as I say, to have 4 spin turns, including this year. Alongside that, after the conclusion of the spin programs, we've been able to both keep on successful spin turns that we have had work with us through the summer, but also candidates who were part of the process and then didn't actually join us as part of the program. We kept them on as consultants on a part-time basis, working on projects that we have worked on whilst they have continued their studies or moved on to other things. Alongside that, we have also, on the back of the spin term program that we completed in 2019, we were really happy to be able to offer a full-time role to our spin term that year. Gideon Gertel has joined us and been with us for 2 years now, and earlier on this year he was also promoted from being an analyst to being a project manager at the firm. So yeah, we think it's a fantastic program. We think that everyone who joins gets certainly with us, we've had a phenomenally positive response in terms of just people being able to get their hands dirty and get on with things. So this just kind of highlights a little bit of the types of things that we do. I highlighted a couple of reports there that I'm not going to dig into today, but what I'd like to do is show some of the work that we make publicly available, just to give you a flavour of the type of analysis that we do, how we support industry, how we support government and investors, but also hopefully show you some data that might set some context for the industry that you're about to spend some time working on if you are not familiar with it. So this chart here is something that tends to get reproduced a fair amount. It's by industry. It's a global space economy number, a breakdown, also showing some of the breakdown between the satellite industry and the non-satellite industry. It shows a number of interesting things. One, it kind of sets in context the size of what's going on, around about 370 billion in the global space economy. It also sets out how important government is in all of that. You can see there in those brown and orange sections. It's the non-satellite industry of roughly $100 billion that's largely representing US government activity and non-US government budget. Sets in context a little bit as well the launch segment of the market. You can see that down there in the smaller green segment. Not to in any way downplay the importance of launch, but often people, when they think about space, they think about launch in terms of what's happening in terms of revenue that's being generated, the money that's being spent. So a relatively small part of that. Obviously a key enabler of the rest of that wheel largely, but you know, just to set that in some kind of context. And some growth there from 2019 to 2020, even though that's clearly been a challenging time for both for the industry, but also for the wider economy. Some numbers as well that kind of set that in a bit more context. You can see there those two teal bars in the top right, just to show there the rise in government space budgets between 2010 and 2020. Clearly some very significant growth there. The role the government plays in catalyzing everything that's going on in the industry remains super, super important. Once we have you know, an established and growing commercial sector, governments are driving lots of spending. Bottom right there, you see some dramatic growth in startup space investment. We produce a report each year that tracks all early stage and private investment into the industry. There's been dramatic growth there, as you can see. Also a change in the types of investors that are coming in, and some of you may be familiar with a thing called the SPAC market, which was a particular mechanism for companies to come to public markets. It was a real theme of 2021, not only in the space industry, but the space industry did benefit significantly from that. It's been a very challenging time since then. But what we now have is a whole bunch of dedicated space companies in the public domain, who are having to report quarterly numbers and make all kinds of disclosures because they're publicly listed equities, which provides some real transparency to start to see what's going on and how companies are operating. We also produce an annual report for the Satellite Industry Association in the US. This is widely regarded as one of the flagship reports that gets produced by the industry to kind of show what's going on, particularly in the satellite industry, clearly. This is just a slide taken from that report that kind of highlights some of the trends. This is actually from last year's report, but it remains relevant and has been relevant for the last few years. Really, what the takeaways from this would be on the far right hand side, ultimately increased productivity, new capabilities, economic growth, and a changing number of end users, as we've seen changes in the industry, a significant kind of lowering of the barriers to entry in terms of new companies coming to market, new capabilities being developed, and a wider cohort of people using satellite-enabled data and technologies. We're seeing an increasing cohort of end users of that capability. Another initiative that Bryce has been involved in over the last several years is the Space Sustainability Rating. This initially was a World Economic Forum initiative to establish a rating that satellite operators could voluntarily sign up to set some standards and some accountability on how they design their missions and how they operate the missions in space, with a view to protecting the environment that we're all wanting to operate in. We're now 5 years into the evolution of this. You can see some EPFL logos on here. EPFL is a Swiss institute that have taken on the long-term operation of the rating. And we were lucky enough last week at the Secure World Foundation, a global summit that was hosted in conjunction with UKSA in London last week, to formally launch the rating and announce the first company to have a rated mission. You see that in the bottom left-hand corner here, the Stellar logo. Stellar, who became the first rated mission. They picked up a bronze rating for their mission, which is the lowest rating, but we think it's really important. It showed great transparency and bravery on their part to be the first to step up. It also shows that although they put a lot of consideration into complying with the high standards of the rating, that there's work to be done. That's just indicative of where we are as an industry. A whole bunch of organisations on here who have been involved in this as well. As I said, we were part of the design team along with the European Space Agency, the Space Enabled Group at MIT, University of Texas at Austin, and continued involvement by the World Economic Forum to design the rating and bring it to market. Next few slides, again, are going to showcase some work that we have done, but also hopefully give you some data to kind of take away and set the context of the industry that you're joining for the summer. We produced earlier on in the year the UK Space Agency's latest edition of the size and health of the UK space industry. This is a report that takes the temperature essentially of where the UK space industry is, and there's some interesting data that has come from that. Ultimately, the key findings here, you'll see the big number there, £16.5 billion is the total space industry income for 2019-20, and it's broken down there along 4 main categories. You can see that space applications dominates that, very much, I think, in line with what you've heard about the Catapult and some of the other companies speaking to here. Space data, very, very, very important in terms of the UK, which is reflective of global industry as well. 83% of their income derived from commercial, which is non-government sales, noting that ultimately one way or another government is still driving some of that in an underlying way. 32% of income coming from exports, another almost 7 billion direct contribution of the space industry to UK GDP, and a 2.x kind of average there of GVA per employee in the industry compared to the national average. Who's producing all of this? Well, in the context and definitions of the report, you can see there's almost 1,300 space organisations that are contributing to that, almost 47,000 direct employees. Very significant R&D number there, noting that the Science Minister and the rest of the base have laid out an ambitious plan to significantly increase that R&D expenditure to bring the UK's kind of R&D budget as a percentage of GDP in line with some of our peers who also have ambitions to secure a larger percentage of the global space economy. Significant employment growth since 2018 and 19, again in the context of a challenging environment during the pandemic, and 73% of employees with bachelor's degree or higher. Quick snapshot here of what's going on with the investment. Touched on this earlier. This is adds a little bit more context in the UK specific basis. There we can see 145 unique investors. £6 billion that have gone into almost 40 companies. There's 90 investment days, and again, so that report that we produce each year that tracks investment into the space economy, where China is not included in that, given some of the challenges around characterizing the investment that's going on there, but UK second only to the US. And again, an increase there in trend from 2 investments in 2012 to 18 in 2021. Where are we exporting this? So over £5 billion being exported. And you can see some of the big, some of the important areas there. Interestingly, North America not the biggest number when we think about the rest of Europe. We've got 19% there with Asia, Oceania, Sub-Saharan Africa. Australia comprising a decent proportion of that. The Catapult has been a key part of the UK-Australia space bridge. I think this is the final slide. This is something that's associated with the Size and Health report. It's essentially a kind of look forward in terms of responses that we get from industry, how they think about things, how optimistic are they about what's coming down the line. You can see that there's a pretty positive view, despite the fact that we've got some significant challenges, not specific to the space industry, but more than 50% expecting income, employment, exports, R&D, and investment to be higher over the next 3 years than from the previous 3 years. So an exciting industry, an important industry in the context of what's going on in the UK. The government has very clearly identified the space industry as a key driver of innovation, as a key driver of high-value job creation, and increasingly recognising the role that the industry and the people within the industry are going to play in developing some of the really critical technologies and capabilities that we need as a nation, globally, to tackle some of the really critical challenges that humanity is facing inside and outside of the space industry. I will leave it there. Contact details are there. Please go on the website to get lots of the reports that we make freely available. There's a ton of data on there that we provide just to help people make better decisions as they're thinking about the future of the industry. Thank you.
Simon. Are there any questions for Simon online as well? Looks like no. Cheers, Simon. Okay then, so we'll move on then to our next speaker, who is Emmanuel from Bristol.
So just use the, all right. Great, I'm Emmanuel. Hopefully I'm loud enough for everyone. I just flew in from the US. I have not slept. I'm approaching delirious, but hopefully, and now my delirium is becoming real because my slide is, yeah, perfect. But hopefully caffeinated enough that I will make sense to you all. Because I was around a bunch of Americans who weren't wearing masks, I am wearing a mask today. This is my face just to say hello. I will now put it back on to keep you guys safe. And all that having been said, I'm going to go forward with the presentation. So I'm here today to talk about, never mind the slides. I'm here today mainly as a former spintern, and because my company has hired quite a number of spinterns. So what I wanted to do today for the talk is very briefly give you an explanation of what my company does. But I want to make that part really brief because a lot of you don't work in my field and don't really care. And I thought that what would be maybe best for you was to explain where I came from, what Spintern has meant to my career, and give you some somewhat unsolicited advice as you guys, go off into your internships. So definitely not the right slide, but the company that I work for is ABS UK/Aura Thrusters. We were born of a mother company in Spain called ABS. And what ABS does is that they provide bespoke engineering solutions for synchrotrons, for lasers, for astrophysics. Essentially, they make instrumentation. And so that instrumentation has included, and normally it's cute, pretty pictures, things like a deployment mechanism for the META instrument on the Mars 2020 rover, or a calibration instrument for, no? Oh yeah, perfect. All right, perfect. This is the cute, pretty pictures. All right, there you go. So ABS Spain does all this stuff. Yeah, examples of things that we've made to make it more easy to, ground you guys, because bespoke engineering solutions just sounds like business speak. We made the ST3 TVAC chamber. Had you done the RAL visit, you would have seen it. It is huge, which is very cool to me. As I mentioned, we also made the calibration target for the Mars 2020 rover and a deployment mechanism for the META instrument. So that's sorry. What ABS specifically, normally I can do slides, by the way. And I promise, I was at a conference, I swear I did real good. I did real good slides. What ABS UK does specifically is we focus on the space sector. So again, examples of what we've done in the space sector at ABS. Are you sure if I press it, will it just keep going?
I'm going to pull it back if it does.
Yeah, that'll work. So yeah, examples of stuff that we've done in the space sector, a gripper for the Mars sample return mission, and if we're able to go to the next one, a thrust balance, which is an instrument that's used to measure thrust and electric propulsion thrusters. At Aura Thrusters, which is another spin-off of ABS, what we do specifically is that we specialize on sustainable in-space propulsion solutions. So in-space propulsion is any kind of propulsion once you're in space. So generally that's separated between chemical propulsion and electric propulsion. What we mostly focus on is electric propulsion. And so that includes systems like, like these. So I put a bunch of pretty pictures. I'm going to say a bunch of names. I'm not going to explain what any of this really means. If you guys want to know, ask me afterwards. I will happily take easy questions. I will not answer hard questions because I am sleep deprived, but I will email you back. So names, examples of things that we work on. We work on something called ICE, which is a MEMS chemical thruster. Very cool. It's one of the only chemical thrusters that we work on. We work on ECR thrusters. We have a series called the JET. We also work, and this is a project that I'm on and that we're doing currently, porous electrospray thrusters, also very cool, under Project PET. We've worked on gridded ion engines, on Hall effect thrusters, my favorite. If you ask me questions about that, you will become my favorite. And also microwave electrothermal thrusters, my least favorite. So if you ask me questions about that, you will become my least favorite. And that's it for talking about basically what the company does. Now we're going to go to what is the most interesting, which is talking about me. So a bit about my background, how I came into Spin, and what Spin has meant to my career. So I started my education in France. I got, to make it simple, a BEng equivalent from École des Mines de Nantes. After that, I moved on to Imperial College London, where I got my MSc. And at the end of my MSc, I did a thesis project with someone called Arnaud, not that that's of particular relevance. To me, it was a great, I don't know how you say rencontre when you meet someone. A great meeting of someone.
Yeah. That'll do.
And I did my master's thesis with him. He then told me about a internship opportunity at a company that I'd never heard of called ABS UK. I applied. I got in because I was working on similar things, and so starts my professional journey. After I completed my internship, I was hired at the company, and I still work there now. And it's been about 3.5 years. I work there now, but at the end of this week, I will no longer be working there because I will be transitioning into a PhD, but I won't be completely leaving the company because this PhD was the brainchild of myself and my line managers so that I can continue to evolve in the company. So it's funded in part by ESA, by Imperial College, Dr. Aaron Knoll's group, who I have continued to work with, and this company that I have grown with because I got to meet them through this internship. And so that takes me to the part of the slides that doesn't actually require slides, thank God, which is where I'm going to talk about what SPIN has meant to me, which hopefully will be relevant to you guys, and the bit with the unsolicited advice. So what SPIN has meant to me, it has meant three things. So having traveled a lot, I've lived in a bunch of different places. I've gotten to experience different styles of education. And one thing that I was particularly grateful for having seen in France, or one thing that I think works really well in France, at least in engineering degrees, is that you must complete internships to get your degree. If you do not complete the internships, you do not get your degree. And that makes sense to me because no matter how good your courses are, you must have a learning period on the job. At least that's the opinion that I've gathered at this stage in my career. No matter how good you are, you need a point in that career in the beginning where you're taken care of slightly differently, where you're given space to learn. And within a French degree, because not only on 1, 2, but on 3 occasions, it's compulsory, the sort of work ecosystem is built around it. So these opportunities exist. It's not just the best students that interns, it's every student that interns. And within this country, I noticed that those opportunities don't exist. So no matter how zealous students are, no matter how good they are, they just don't have that good of an opportunity to complete their learning. And that's where SPIN comes in for me, because it gives the companies the finance and the means and an encouragement to provide you guys with this opportunity. And it is so precious because in my case, SPIN is what made me find this company. It was the one opportunity in the country to work in a really small field doing exactly what I want to do. And I still do that today. I still work for that same company. And that's meant the world. And not only that, but because I had an internship opportunity, for me, this is the third thing, the third reason why it's so important. I was given space to learn and space to make mistakes. And I was very quickly given a lot of responsibility. And I went ahead and I made all those mistakes and they were really painful. And I learned. And without that opportunity, I don't think that I would have been able to make all of those mistakes, given that room, given that comfort to make those mistakes. And so again, that's why the SPIN internships mean a lot to me. And so that takes me to unsolicited advice. I have 4 pieces of unsolicited advice for you guys. The first is, but this one I think you guys have pretty much gotten already. Intern as much as you can. As much as you can. That's it. Number 2, please go out and make those mistakes. I know it sounds like some kind of motivational speech, but I swear, even when I see incoming interns, it is much better to have a student try something that is completely left field and hilariously wrong, rather than having a student stuck in paralysis. Try. And then you'll get redirected, but try, and it will be appreciated. And people who don't appreciate it, suck. And people who expect interns not to make mistakes are idiots. So go ahead, make your mistakes. Third piece of advice, please apply for the smaller companies. The what, the who, doing what, look into them, get curious. You might fall on gold. And just because you're interning for a small company doesn't mean that you won't be learning. In fact, in some cases, at a smaller company, you might learn more. And that's certainly my case. Within 6 months of having joined ABS UK, I was technical lead on my project, probably not fit to do so, but I was. And so I learned, and project manager of that same project. Go for the small companies. Look, be curious. And fourth, even if you think that you're not a good match for an application, please apply. Honestly, please apply. Of course, measure how much time it will take you to actually apply. That time is going to take too much. Don't do it, but apply. In certain cases, I swear to you, applying for things where you weren't quite a good fit will give you an opportunity to make connections which will matter to you in your career. I've wanted to do a PhD for a really long time. I got really close plenty of times and fell short. Could have hurt, but ultimately I was really okay with it. And in one case, I applied for something that wasn't quite a fit. I'd worked on the project before, didn't want to start working on it again, thought it would still be good to put my hat in the ring. I ran into the guy who fielded my application at the conference just now. We had a really good chat. Now that I'm starting this other PhD, we're going to be getting back in touch in a couple of years' time because we found a way to do joint research that's interesting. And had I not applied, I wouldn't have had that connection. I wouldn't have this opportunity for this great new bit of research. Apply for stuff, even if you think you're not the right match. Sometimes people ask for the moon. They ask for things that are impossible, and they won't get what they ask for. And in certain cases, they ask for things that they didn't actually really want, and you can't find that out until you apply. So please, intern as much as possible. Make all the mistakes that you can. Be curious for the little companies. And whatever the fourth one that I just said was. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Emmanuel?
I've got a really quick comment. Emmanuel, it's so lovely to see you again, and thank you for those. Can I sign you up to talk to companies and to students next year, please?
Sure. I'll get the company to expense the car. It'll be nice. No questions?
Have any questions? No. Brilliant. Thanks so much.
You can sleep now.
Okay, so next up from AstraScale, we've got Jason Portrait.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here today. I'm here from AstraScale, and what I want to do today is really present what we're doing as a business, to talk to you a bit about space sustainability, and also to tell you about well, the overall spin scheme and how we're involved now and how we've been involved in the past. So I'm the head of future business here at AstraScale. So a lot of things I do, I work in the area of business development. So I work with customers, I work creating partnerships and things like that. And I work with a lot of the companies that are here on campus as well. I'm going to be talking to you a bit about who those companies are and how we work with them as well. So for those of you that aren't familiar with AstraScale, our vision is the safe and sustainable development of space for the benefits of future generations. And we're really here as a company looking towards sustainability. I'll tell you in a short while about sustainability in space, but the net effect is that space itself is really not very sustainable in the present climate. And all companies in the entire space sector need to work towards sustainability actions to ensure that we treat space well, and that we can continue to use it for the future. In 50 years, 100 years from now, we have an environment that is still fit for purpose to use. And we're doing that through three different approaches. We're developing the technologies needed to help clean up space. We're advancing our business case, and this is an area that nobody has really done before commercially. So we have to grow that business case to ensure that it is a business in the first place. And we're also working on international policies and different aspects of policy and regulation in order to advance our overall business. So those are three key things. So we've grown into a well-established company. Sorry if you can't see the map too well in the background, but it is a world map. When I joined the company, there were about 30 staff globally across the whole company. We've now grown to about 300. In the UK, I started with the former MD and started at the UK office here, and there were just 4 of us at the time of starting. So, that was back in 2017. So here we are a few years later, and we've grown to almost 100, well, about 100 staff in the UK. So you can imagine over just a few years, we've grown significantly. But I mean, for those companies out there which are much, much smaller, I mean, we were in that situation just a few years back. So, it's become a real journey as we've grown from something which only had a few people to something much, much bigger. So as you can see, our other offices here are in Japan, in Israel, and the US. Japan is our headquarters. We've raised $300 million, so that's a significant amount of capital, but necessary, obviously, to grow the staff and grow the actual business. I'm going to be talking through a bit later our different leadership roles and the different types of missions and services we offer. But as mentioned, we've grown significantly. have almost 100 staff. One of the key things I should note is that we're going to be moving into a new building very, very shortly, actually. It's called the Zeus Building. You can see it just in the bottom left photo. And in the middle photo, you can see what it looked like, one of the parts of the building before it was kitted out. And that is just behind us, about a 5-minute walk from here, really. So we've been working in a lot of temporary offices recently in the UK. This will be the first opportunity to go into a much larger building. We'll have things like clean room facilities and operations room, things like that. We've been working with a lot of different parties. You might have heard of some of these here: Thales, MDA, NAMO, AAC, RIA, GMV, CGI, NORS. Don't worry if you haven't, but I guess, you know, through your time here, I guess many of you will be working in Harwell. I'm sure there'll be opportunities to speak to a lot of these other companies here. But as part of growing our supply chain, you know, we work with all these companies, and you'll see, if you look at the map of the Harwell campus, they're dotted throughout the overall campus, all these companies here. And of course, we're working in close partnership with the Catapult right here in this building, the National In-Orbit Servicing Control Center. You can see in the top right a photo of it when all the screens are on. It's just over there on the other side of reception. So that's where all the spacecraft operations are conducted from. So of course, when you want to control a satellite, you need operators sitting there, telling the satellite exactly what to do, seeing where it is, etc. And that's all done from the operations room, just on the other side. So our vision is supported by a real clear opportunity. The global economy is more dependent on satellites than ever, and not many people really think about it. They go about their everyday lives relying on tech that comes from satellites. Your GPS in your car, transportation, logistics, a lot of financial transactions go through satellites. The internet, communications, Earth observation, disaster monitoring, all of these come from satellites. So you can imagine a world if we didn't have these services. We'd be back in the Stone Age. Even your phone, your internet, all these things would have trouble. Space debris, for those of you that aren't too aware of it, or space junk as it's known, there's about 10,000 tons of space junk up there. There's millions of fragments that are about between 1 and 10 centimeters in size. And you can imagine any of these satellites that get hit by this space junk would effectively be destroyed. And that is creating more debris. And accidents in space have happened in the past. So it's important we clear up our space junk up there. If we don't clear up a lot of these failed satellites, of which there are several thousand already in space, we're going to have an unsustainable environment where we're going to have trouble launching things in future and having access to all these services. So we're kind of in the scenario now where, a lot of satellites in space, they're not being removed, they're not being repaired, recycled, refueled. And that is putting the global economy and space sustainability at risk. And the reality is, if you look at here on Earth, let's say your car breaks down on the motorway, you have the AA, they'll come and pick up your car and tow away your car, right? You don't have that in space at the moment. If your satellite fails up there, it's just going to be left there floating about in space. So I think, with that analogy, it's important we have these kind of tow truck services to clean up our debris. And of course, I think both the government and the industry recognize that in-orbit servicing, as it's known, or debris removal, is necessary to solve this global problem. So I think that's the key of what we're working towards. So we're working on a few key areas here. We have what's known as end-of-life services, and this is removing some of the constellation satellites that are being launched, the ones that fail. You might have heard of OneWeb. That's one of the largest constellation operators in the world. We've been working with them for about 4 years. Euroconsult predict there are about 17,000 satellites that will be launched by 2030. So we're in a different world. If you look at what's happened since the 1960s, 70s, etc., since the start of the space age, we've only launched a small fraction of several thousand satellites. And then in the next several years, we're going to be launching tens of thousands of satellites. So we're at a kind of transition point here in space where, you and everybody here will see what happens in the environment in terms of, the massive increase in number of satellites that are going to be up there. We're working as well on what we call ADR, active debris removal, in terms of removing the satellites that are up there. So we're working on removing satellites that are going to be launched. So if those fail, we have methods to deal with those, and removing satellites that are presently up there. So completely clearing up space. One of the areas as well is called space situational awareness. And all that simply means is having sensors on board your satellites in space in order to collect more information, more data. And one of the opportunities we have for SPIN this year is on space situational awareness. And that person, that in turn will look at that area and work with our head of SSA to look at the different types of sensors and payloads and things like that that could be used for that application. Another one of our areas this year in SPIN is actually business analysis. Now, you can imagine that just like any company, we need lots of non-technical areas. So there might be some of you out there which are thinking, I'm a non-technical person. Can I get into the space industry in the future? That's always one of the questions. And the answer is yes. We have, business team, business analysis, business development, the sales, you can imagine finance, HR, IT, all the usual functions every business has, we have as well. So our business analysis team looks at, who are our customers, how do we sell our services, at what price points, all of these things, building the business case. And we have a SPIN intern looking at that area this year as well. So it's quite an interesting area because this is an evolving market. And on the far right, we have what's known as life extension. There's lots of satellites out there, geostationary. Those are the ones that orbit the Earth at the same rate, so they're always looking at the same position on Earth. And some of those satellites fail and need repositioning or moving, and we offer those services as well. So here are some of our missions. I shan't go into too much detail, but you might have heard of the top mission. It's called ELSA-D. This was a mission we launched in March 21. And it involves two satellites we launched together, and they kind of dock and undock in a series of demonstrations to demonstrate the capability of being able to capture satellites in space. So it's a key breakthrough mission. And recently we put out a press release just a few months ago showing that we'd again made major successes with the ELSA-D mission. So that's just a summary of some of our different missions. So moving on to the policy thing, the policy slide, just talk to you a bit about how we're involved in this kind of area. We have lots of key people in policy. Our new managing director, Nick Shave, is the chair of UK Space. There's an organization known as Confers, which is an industry group looking at the whole of in-orbit servicing. And what you'll find is maybe most of the companies you're working for that are working in in-orbit servicing are part of this Confers group as well. We're the chair for that as well. And of course, our top CEO, Nobu, is the one of the vice presidents of IAF. IAF is an organization that's International Astronautical Federation that also run the IAC conference, which happens every single year. That's the world's largest space conference. So some of you might have attended that or might attend that in the future. But I think in terms of policy, it's important, policy and regulation. It's important to note that there has to be the understanding by governments and industry that space sustainability is a priority and we need to deal with it. And that's why there's a lot of things going on in this area. And as was mentioned earlier, there was the Space Sustainability Summit that just happened last week by the UK Space Agency and Secure World Foundation hosted that. And that was very successful. HRH Prince of Wales gave a very interesting speech talking about how we need an Astro Charter, which is a Magna Carta, but for space, talking about how we need to kind of create the rules and regulations and for space, because many of those things just don't exist at the moment. We had UK Science Minister, Minister Freeman, talking as well about how they want to invest in debris removal services. So some funding has been committed to that. and also looking at how the law is going to change in the future in terms of saying that, we need to evolve the regulation in the UK to keep up to date with this whole space sustainability agenda. So, here are some additional awards we've recently been awarded. I think Fast Company, 10 most innovative companies. We've won the Via Satellite Technology of the Award for the LCD mission. And of course, the Time 100 most influential companies this year. But yeah, please, if you've got a chance, take a look at Astroscale online. Take a look at space sustainability. Do some research if you have an interest in that area, and look at our LCD mission as well. But yeah, that's all I've got to say today, and thank you very much. Hopefully it's given you a bit of an insight into who we are, what we do, the spin application, the spin process of how we're involved, and some of the different companies that we're working with, etc. Thank you.
Oh, Jason, any questions in the room or online? We've got questions back.
I've been aware of the company for a long time. I'm really glad that what you're making is pretty wonderful. The thing that you explained a while ago, when small particle hitting the satellite and it's cascading effect and hitting the other satellites. I'm not an expert, but I have a little bit knowledge. It's called Kessler syndrome, I believe.
Yes.
I have a little bit question regarding that. I want to make this analogy. Right? There's an old saying that when you have 100 killers in a city and you kill one, when you have 100 murderers in a city, when you murder a murderer, how many murderers left? 100 again, right?
Okay.
So when you are trying to minimize the number of satellites in space because of the sustainability issue, and with this you're putting more satellites in space. What's the ethical point of view from your regard?
Okay. What I would say overall is that I think we do need satellites, and a large number are going to be launched. And what that will do is provide more services to everybody. So we can't really stop that. It's just like when cars were invented. At the beginning, people didn't want to drive them because they were so fast, and they preferred horseback. And as cars started coming in, people were saying, well, who would ever drive these things? And that cars have been expanded. Now everybody has a car, right? So it's a similar kind of thing, that the satellites have to grow to support the services we need here on Earth. The question is, can that be done in a sustainable manner? Can we ensure that the rules and regulations are in place to say that if a set number fail, we actually can, go up and clear them up? And I think it's going to be clear some of these are going to fail. We know some of the satellite operators out there have already announced that some of the things they've launched have already failed. And then it comes down to companies like ourselves to go up there and actually remove some of these satellites. In terms of small debris, as you said, yes, is known as the Kessler syndrome, and it's like an exponential phenomenon. Imagine if some debris hits other debris, it breaks into more debris, and then that debris hits other debris and creates more debris. It's very, very difficult for us to remove the small debris that causes the damage in space, because there's no technological solution. All we can do is start removing the larger satellites that have failed. And these larger satellites, the failed ones, if you remove those, then you're reducing the overall probability and risk in space. So you're actually helping to keep the space sustainable. So it's really two things. It's removing those larger satellites in space, and it's ensuring that satellites that we put up there are designed in such a way that they can be easily removed. So they have things like docking plates as interfaces to allow them to be easily removed. And that they also, when they fail, that, they say, okay, we need a service like Astroscale or somebody else to come down and bring them down. And only if we can do these things, we can keep space at a sustainable level. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Oh, question. Yeah.
Yes, it's a quick question. How do you see the funding being for removing debris? Would it be publicly funded or somehow taken from the satellite operators?
Yeah, so as a company, we've raised about $300 million. I think investors are starting to become more aware that we need these type of solutions. I would say as well that we've had a lot of funding coming in from different bodies such as UK Space Agency, from the European Space Agency, and most of that is match funded. But that is money coming in, and it's commitments from, say, the UK Space Agency to say they actually want to remove 2 pieces of UK-owned debris from space, and also commitments from, say, JAXA, who we're working with, to say they want to remove their debris as well. So if you get a lot of governments saying they want to remove their debris, then that is a process whereby you can start paying for some of these things. And then commercially, yeah, it's about convincing these large constellation parties that they need to get rid of their junk. And there's one thing known as ESG, environmental social governance. And you might have seen that for every company in the world, it's becoming more and more important to become sustainable. And if you don't become sustainable, your investors and shareholders and others, they're not going to invest in your business. So I think that is another key driver. So, oh, please, yeah, more questions.
Jason, a really quick one, because I've been very much on the periphery of these kind of discussions. But I think that there are elements where regulation and insurance are beginning to drive change, in that you won't get the licensing for your satellite if you haven't considered how you're going to deal with these issues longer term, or get insurance for it if you haven't done all of that. Is that moving forward as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our LCD mission, we work with our broker Willis in London to look at insuring the mission. And we have both, it's always mandatory to have third-party insurance. So in case your satellite causes problems, that there's insurance for that. But we also have launch insurance, success insurance, all sorts of things on our main mission to ensure that if there's a problem, then there could be potentially a payout for that. So it is getting more complicated, as you say, and you're right, there's a strong link between regulation and how insurance works. And there's been talk for a long while about could there be things like kite marks or other standardization aspects in these areas to say that, if you have a constellation that you meet a certain grade. And I think talking back to prior presentation from Rice on space sustainability rating, are the methods where you say constellations or other satellites that are launching have a set level of sustainability, and if so, can they meet certain criteria? And I think insurance is an important part of that as well. So there's a lot evolving in that sector. There are some companies that are trying to develop insurance models for this. Other companies are finding it too difficult and have left the space sector entirely in terms of insurance. But yeah, I think watch this space because this is an emerging market. There's lots of things that are changing over time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, let's give Jason another round of applause. So we're nearly through the industry presentations. We just have one more. So yeah, Tiffin from Earth-i.
Thank you, Eddie. Just the white arrow. Yeah. Thanks, Eddie, and thanks very much for the invitation to speak here today. So yeah, probably let's just start with a bit about myself. So my route into the space sector was via the IT sector. So I discovered the personal computer while I was still in school, and decided, right, that was the career for me. Did a couple, not an internship, but a couple of years working before I went to university, but I decided to do a degree in computer science with artificial intelligence, which was very much the thing back then. This is, we're talking a few decades ago now. But from university, joined an IT services company, CGI, which you may have come across, which had a space division. So started working in space through them. Got really excited about Earth observation, and then decided I really wanted to join a company that specialized in Earth observation. And so about 5 years ago, joined Earth-i. So let's dive in. Can I just get a feel how many people here are working with Earth observation, or your placement is to do with EO? There's quite a few of you. Okay, so that'll tell me how much to which we're on about Earth observation sensors and technologies. So Earth-i, we were set up in 2015 around the concept of launching a constellation of satellites to do high resolution, full color video from space. And we successfully launched a demonstration satellite in 2018. It was called Vivid X2. And it has collected some really nice high-resolution videos of the Earth. So you can see, cities, cars moving around, ships moving in and out of ports. You can do lots of interesting things with the video. So as you're flying over a site, you can get a very nice 3D model of the site. And of course, you can extract the motion analytics from that, so you can tell how fast the cars are moving or what direction the ships are going in. So lots of exciting stuff. Although while we were in the process of raising the finance to launch this constellation of satellites, it sort of became apparent that there were just so many other operators launching more and more Earth observation satellites all the time. We just heard about that, in fact. So we're moving from a world where there's tens of satellites to hundreds of satellites to thousands of Earth observation satellites up there, and many others also doing video. Many other things were happening in parallel. Change of government in the UK, the Brexit thing was all going on, and then the pandemic hit. So we decided to refocus ourselves on the downstream side of Earth observation. So the company today is very much about the analytics, the insights, the information we can extract from satellite imaging. And we're developing a portfolio of products that focus on the commercial and defense worlds. So looking at things like financial services, commodity supply chains, ESG, which you heard about earlier, and then security and intelligence. So there's obviously a lot of interest in, for example, now where Russian tanks are, for example. We are a very small company, so we're just under 20 people today, but we are more technologists than business developers or managers, and we're predominantly, IT experts, so AI experts, geospatial technologists, data scientists in the team. And yeah, I think I've said this, so this is just saying our mission is all around extracting information of value from the satellite Earth observation data. You can see on the right some logos of all these companies we work with now. So we regularly use Airbus data, Planet data, of course the free and open Copernicus Sentinel data, but then operators in China like SpaceWill, the Koreans, ComSat, and the Americans, Maxar. Of course, new things coming online, new constellations like ISI, which is high resolution radar, Pixel, which is a high resolution hyperspectral mission constellation, Capella Space, again, radar. So all of these really interesting data sources out there, and a real opportunity for a company like ours to work with those multiple sources at high resolution and develop really novel information products for customers that give them value in their day-to-day business. And that's where we're sort of really focusing our efforts. So yeah, very much about the multi-sensor, multi-resolution, multi-operator satellite data and what we can do with it. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of the types of products we're working on. I won't go into a lot of detail on any of them, as I know it's just me between you and your lunch. Savant, this is an operational product that we have running. We've got customers signed up and subscribed to this. And this is all about monitoring copper smelters, copper and nickel smelters around the world. So with optical satellite data, you can see activity in terms of their heat signatures. And we're looking at those to work out which smelters are operational, which ones aren't. And that gives us an index of how productive they are. So we can develop from the information of whether they're on or off. We look at an activity capacity index and then an activity dispersion index. So capacity is just saying how much of their capacity is active at any time, and dispersion is saying, relative to an average level of productivity, what might their production be at any given time. And this type of data is of real interest to the financial services sector, so commodity traders, the agency's monitoring activity, and also the ESG type of players who want to understand the impact these industries are having on the environment, and are they doing what they say they're doing in terms of how much they're producing. Particularly interesting for parts of the world where information isn't so freely available. And yeah, this is how customers see the data. So they see a graph of how active a particular smelter is. And then we amalgamate that data up so they can see at regional level what's going on, maybe at country level, and then even at continental level. So, you know, how much is being produced across the whole of Asia or the whole of Africa or wherever. And then that's got us thinking, if we can see that just from heat signatures, what can we see if we start looking at other things in the industrial supply chain? So of course, there's many things that are visible from space. You can see stockpiles in ports, you can see smoke coming out of chimney stacks, you can see raw materials arriving at a port. And again, all of this is really valuable information for those who are interested in this kind of thing, particularly those who are interested in trading in these types of commodities. So this is actually being funded by the European Space Agency through the Business Applications Program. This is still in development, but we are now expanding the concept of Savant to look at a range of industries. So moving from just copper and nickel to looking at things like steel, zinc, aluminium, and not just looking at heat signatures, but also looking at, as I mentioned, you know, smoke. In fact, there's examples on the next slide. So yeah, looking at smoke plumes, stockpiles, ships arriving in the port, departing the port. Yeah, I think you get the idea from that. So it's not just about commodity supply chains. Another area we're really interested in is agriculture. And we've done a lot of work in looking at soft commodity supply chains such as coffee. So again, we had a project funded by the UK Space Agency through the International Partnerships Program, where we were helping coffee farmers in Africa, in Kenya and Rwanda particularly, to improve the quality of their coffee yield and the quantity of their coffee production. And that led us on to this, which is using satellite data to try and work out how healthy the coffee crops are in those areas. Also using AI and machine learning to detect where the coffee is growing. So you can look at, you know, a very large country like Brazil and delineate the crop areas that are coffee and are not coffee, and then use spectral data to understand the health of those coffee crops. And again, that information is really of great interest to traders, wholesalers, so the buyers and sellers of coffee, wanting to know how productive and what quality the crop might be from a particular region in a particular season. And that, again, has been developed into a product by us. So here, this is the sort of portal we run that enables you to zoom into particular areas of the world, see where the coffee is growing, and then see graphs of how the coffee is doing in terms of its vegetation index with error bars and so on, so people have an idea of how accurate is the information they're looking at. Okay, and then I mentioned doing a bit of work in the security and defense arena as well. So this is a product line called Spectrum, where we have been very successful at training machine learning algorithms to detect certain types of objects in satellite imagery, both at the high resolution and the very high resolution. So we have models that can detect different types of Russian aircraft, for example, but also models that can detect different types of ships and tell you what they are. I think I've got that on the next slide. So an example there of, yeah, the port in North Africa. So again, this is information that's of great interest to a number of different stakeholders, not just in the sort of security and defense context, but also commercially. So operators wanting to know how busy a port is, how many ships coming in, how many ships leaving, and that can give them an idea of the types of trade volumes going through that port. And again, extending the machine learning. Yeah, so we also have other examples where people are interested in, say, how urban expansion is going on. So you can train a machine learning model to detect buildings, construction, and use that, use a series of images to get an idea of how rapidly change is taking place in areas, how rapidly cities are growing, and so on. Final example is Vantage. So we haven't completely forgotten about satellite video. And this was a project to build a community platform where collaborators could come together and play with video from space. So we've deployed this in the cloud. We've uploaded a good 300 or so of our videos acquired from the Vivid X2 satellite, and they're all there available for users to come and experiment with. We've also deployed a number of algorithms, so things that can extract movement from the videos, or extract 3D models from the videos, or pick out a particular frame from the video and give you that as an image for analysis. And yeah, we've had a number of successful hackathons around this concept. So we had back in February, March, had an event where we had 17 teams with 25 people from around the world, in fact, come and play with the satellite data and just brainstorm ideas for detecting objects in the videos and then extracting their movement characteristics from the videos. So a lot of interest in this still. Okay, so Eddie asked me to talk specifically about our experience with internships and what value we derive as a company from having interns on board. So we typically do have 2 to 3 interns each year, and it's a diverse range of projects that they have worked on with us. Some previous examples here on the slide. So using satellite radar to understand levels of activity, extracting vegetation characteristics from SAR data, and all of these things are relevant to the products that we're developing as a company. So yeah, flood risk mapping is another example, and then the coffee that I mentioned, so delineation of the coffee crops using satellite data. We've had spin a couple of times before. You see example on the right there of poster produced by one of our previous spin turns. So just more detail here on the sort of the value that we get from having interns on board while we do it. So we do offer a broad range of subjects in the adverts that we put out for internships, but we try to make sure that the actual project aligns both with our interests as well as the students' interests in terms of what they're doing at university and whether that the project is going to help them in their reaching their either coursework or career goals in future. We are a fully remote working company at the moment, so we did have an office in Guildford, but through the pandemic we decided that that wasn't really cost effective, so we're all working remotely, including the interns, but we do try and get together once a month in the Guildford area. And then, yeah, we do obviously allocate a dedicated supervisor, and that we try to make sure that's one of the younger members of our team. So it's usually one of the younger techies. And they have, yeah, day-to-day communication with that person primarily. What else? Yeah, there's the opportunity, as I said, for co-locations and then internal presentations to the rest of the company in terms of the work that's being done. And of course, we encourage all our interns to leave their work well documented so we can then take what they've done forward and integrate that work into our own products and services. Okay, yeah, and possibility of employment. So in fact, we have had members of staff who have been former interns on our team, and that opportunity is of course always there for our spin turns to come and join us. So this year we're running 2 projects, and we've in fact selected 2 candidates for these. So, and they're both here in the room. So we have Siddharth here at the front and Choyan, who are working on these 2 projects. So synthetic data for machine learning. So I guess those of you familiar with machine learning will know you've got to feed it a lot of training data for the model to then train and be able to detect things. What we'd like to do is introduce noise to those training data sets. So, instead of just looking at an image of a plane, you could be looking at a snowy image of a plane or a sandy image of a plane and see if we can train the model to still realize that there's a plane there. And then SAR and optical data fusion. So here, of course, with your optical data, you're often thwarted by cloud cover. So it's great to have radar data to fill in where you don't have an optical image to work with in terms of working out what activity is going on. But the challenge there is making sure your images are well aligned and what you're seeing in one place on the optical image is actually in the same place in the radar. data that we're working with. So that's going to be an exciting project for Choyang to work on. And yeah, so that's going to work on the machine learning synthetic data one. We also work with the SecTech program. So in fact, this year we've been really greedy and we're going for 4 interns. And that's worked out because 2 of these people were keen to have their internships later in the year. So we've had 2 start with us last week. That's Choyang and Daniel. And they'll be working through July to August. And then Siddharth and Martin are going to join us later on in September. And that works out well for us in terms of the workload on the supervisors, so they can dedicate their time over the first 2 months to one person, and then the next 2 months to another person. So I think that's it from me. Thank you for listening. I'll happy to take questions.
So are there any questions on the room? Yeah, one at the back.
I'm an observation student as well, and your work with identifying the objects remotely really interesting to me, because after this internship I'll be going to work on the detection of oil refineries remotely with you all. I think you might become that. You only look once. But yeah, my question is that you have a lot of services for the data that you are going to analyze through the web applications and the web portals, but do you have the API service as well?
We do, yes, yes. So for the operation services, we have like Savant. Users are able to connect sort of machine to machine. There's an API for them. They can also download data sets, so in whatever format they want it, so comma separated or Excel or whatever. And that is really important, because a lot of the challenge with getting customers to take up this data is their ability to integrate it, ingest it into their own workflows, and do further analytics on the data and draw their own conclusions. So yeah, we definitely offer that.
Exactly. And it is more feasible if there is an API service rather than building your own web application for it. But I think it's more visualized in that way. But API service is more into further analysis for your own operations.
Exactly. Yes.
And also I have a request. I think I'll be taking your contact after this. If I want to get a position after my presentation.
Yeah, by all means, let's be in touch.
Okay, so we're stopping lunch from happening. So shall we ask that question at lunchtime? Is that okay? It doesn't look like there's any questions online. So thank you very much. Because we're running slightly behind, and I want to make sure that we're promptly arriving at Ralph's space. So I'll stop talking. Lunch has been delivered to the back of the room where the tea and coffee was earlier for the people that were in the room. For everybody that's online, we will be coming back from our Ralph space visit at about 2 o'clock, where we'll have a wrap up. So please do join us again at 2 o'clock just for a short wrap up. But that was the end of all the talks. I hope they were really useful. The breadth of the space sector has just been shown with the upstream, downstream, and the in-orbit activities. So thanks to all of the speakers. Let's go and have some lunch.